We're going to start building the box today. So everybody has a bag with all their slabs in it that they cut yesterday, right? Okay. So we're going to take out these. Okay. If you saved your templates, they should be on top of the stacks that they go with. So these are my 4x4 slabs. And the reason why I wanted you to save it was not only to be able to identify which stack was which, but also it tells you that the 4x4 squares are for the bottom, side one, and the lid. Okay. And then the 4x3.5 rectangles are for sides 2, 3, and 4 of your box. Okay. So just keep that in mind that these bigger squares are going to be, one's going to be for the bottom of the box, one's going to be for the top of the box, and the third one's going to be the first side that you put on to your base, to the bottom. Okay, so we're going to set one aside because that one is going to be for the lid. And we don't need to do anything to the lid for now. So in order for this to not dry out too much, you can just put your lid back in your bag so that during class it doesn't dry out. Okay. And you can take out the rest of your pieces and we'll see what we can get through today in terms of building the box. We're not going to be able to have time to build the entire box today, but you guys can do this along with me instead of just watching and then doing. If you'd like to follow along with me and do yours while I'm doing it, that would be great. So we've got, these are the smaller pieces here, the 4x3.5. This one's going to be for my base, the bottom of my box. So I'm going to put it right there in the middle. And I already put away the one that's for the lid. And then here's the third one that can be for side one. Okay, so we're going to be attaching side one onto the bottom of the box. Okay, I've got my extra pieces here that I don't need quite yet. I can just leave them right there. I also have this extra slab. Remember, we saved our extra clay, and I've got some extra slabs here, and I'm going to show you how we're going to use that in a minute. First, I'd like to just make sure that my squares didn't get stretched out too much. Sometimes when we handle them, they get a little stretched out. They also might get a little bit smushed, and you want to make sure that your square is still the right size and shape. So you can lay your template back on top of it and just make sure it's still the correct size. I see mine did get a little bit stretched. So instead of cutting away from it, I'm just going to smush it back to that square shape. It really didn't get distorted that much, but if there's any part of your square that got distorted or stretched, you can just kind of smush it back to that template shape. Okay, I'll do the same thing to this one. This one actually was in pretty good shape. This one's a little bit more distorted. It's got lots of bumps on the sides. I'm going to put it right to the edge here. It's not too bad, actually. Just has some bumps to smush in. Okay. You don't need to make it perfect because you are going to be ending up scoring and slipping and sticking and smoothing this together. So it'll get a little distorted again, but good idea just to start out with the right size. Okay. Here I've also got a fork. You can use a fork to score with. You can use a needle tool to score with. It's up to you which one you'd like to use. Okay. So remember, we use the score, slip, stick, and smooth technique, the 4 S's. Score means to scratch up the clay. So I think I'll put my first side right here. So the first side is going to go on top of the box. It's not going to get attached to the side. It's going to get attached to the top of the base right here. Okay, so I'm just scratching up the clay. And then this is where it's going to attach right here. So I'm going to also score here. If you don't have a fork, you can also use the needle tool. It just takes longer to score because you only get one scratch at a time. With the fork, you get 4 scratches at a time because it's got those 4 prongs. Okay, so I've scratched up the clay. That's called scoring. Then we're going to use slip. That's what you need the paintbrush for. Make sure your slip has a little bit of water at the top so it's nice and watery. Get some wet clay. You don't have to slip both sides. You can just put plenty of slip on one of the sides that you're attaching. Okay, so that's enough slip. Then you're going to take your first side, which is also 4x4. Okay, so we're attaching 2 4x4 pieces together. I'm going to stick it down. I like to just slightly wiggle it a little bit. See how I'm going a little bit side to side? I like to wiggle it just a little bit so that you can really make sure that those scored, scratched up areas kind of connect with one another like this. Okay, so those scored areas are, when you wiggle them together, you're wiggling them together like this so they create a bond. Okay, and then you're going to smooth the outside. You can just smooth a tiny bit on the inside, but really the next step is going to be important for keeping it together. The next step, instead of just smoothing it in this seam right here on the inside, you are going to take one of your extra slabs, and normally we would use a coil, but since we have slabs, you can just cut a sliver, okay, and kind of coil it a little bit, round it out just a bit. Okay, so I just rounded it out a little bit. So that's actually a sliver of slab that I just rounded out a little bit. And you're going to put it in the seam like this. And then you can cut any extra off like that at the end. Okay, and you're going to push it in. There's already some slip there, which is great, because that slip is also going to help it to adhere. But you can't just stop there. You don't want to have just a coil that is visible there. After you've pressed it in, then you want to take a wooden modeling tool, and you can use your finger for this since it's quite open. By the time you get to your 4th side, you're not going to be able to reach your finger in there to do this, but you can start with your finger, or you can just start using the modeling tool. Hold one of your hands on the back of this wall so that it doesn't fall down while you're smoothing. You're going to take your wooden modeling tool or your finger at this point, and you're going to start really smoothing that coil into the seam, and until it is completely smooth and it doesn't look like there was anything ever there. Okay, now I can't see what I'm doing because it's facing away from me, so I'm going to turn it around and try to make it so you guys can still see. Okay, so again, I'm holding my hand behind so that it doesn't fall over while I'm smoothing, and I'm going to keep going until it looks like that coil was never even there and it just is a nice smooth corner. Okay, that piece of slab was just a little bit dry, so I'm actually going to take a little slip and put it at the top of the seam there so you can see where I'm putting it. I'll put that like that. So right at the top of the seam. Feels a little dry to me, so I'm just adding a little slip to make it easier to smooth. This is going to ensure that your box does not fall apart. If you don't do this and you just put your pieces together without scoring, slipping, sticking, smoothing, and attaching with a coil here, all your box pieces, by the time they get bone dry, they'll fall apart. And we don't want our boxes falling apart. We want our boxes completely intact and gorgeous by the end of the project. Okay, and then we also have a rib tool that you can use. Just getting a little bit of the dried clay off of this rib tool. Be careful when you do this because these can poke you. Okay, and I'm just going to use the rib tool just to do a little bit more smoothing in that corner, going up and then down this way. Okay. I do also have a little texture on my box from the slab roller. So you can use your rib tool. If you want to get rid of that texture, you can use your rib tool gently. You don't want to scrape too much clay away, but if you gently go like this, it will just wipe that texture right away and leave you with really nice, smooth clay. Okay, so now I don't have any of that texture there, and I didn't have to add water to do that. It just smooths the way away if you use the flat side of the rib tool. Okay, and then you can see I've got lots of clay on the edge of the rib tool. You can wipe that onto the edge of the slip container like that, just to clean it off, so you're left with a clean surface again after you're done, because you're going to be using that again. Okay. All right, so that's side one, right? And remember, on our templates, we have to use the other sides, the 4 by 3.5, for sides 2, 3, and 4. Now, it may not be perfect. It may not fit exactly. There might be some trimming that you have to do, but generally it should be about the right size. Okay, so we're going to take our 4 by 3.5 pieces. Let's take one and check the size again, like on the template, like I did with the 4 by 4 pieces. Just scoot this over a little bit. I'm going to check the size with my template, make sure it didn't get too stretched out. Okay, it is a bit off, so I'm going to do some adjusting to this piece. Okay, this side is good. Okay. All right, that's good. Again, if you want to take this texture off of your clay, you can use the rib tool and smooth it out. Thank you. All right, pretty smooth. I'm going to just do the other side. I do have a little crack right here, so I want to smooth that out. You can always do smoothing later after your box is complete, but starting out with nice smooth slabs is always great too. Doesn't have to be perfect before you build it, but some smoothing is good to start with, and when your box is done, you'll be finishing up all that smoothing. All right, so I got that crack away, which was good. There's still some little texture in there, but can deal with that later. Okay, so let's see. It goes like this. No, it goes like, how does this go? Oh, it's this way. Okay. Nope, it's not that way. Okay, there we go. Like I said, some trimming is going to be necessary. It's not going to be 100% perfect, but it'll do. Okay, so we've got this side 2, and I'm just going to check here just to make sure this is all going to fit nicely. Then we've got side 3, and then this should slip right in here without too much issue. Yeah, okay, so we've got, these are our other 3 sides. So this is how they're going to go in. We're going to have to put this one right up against the inside right here of this wall and against the bottom here. So this is how this one goes, like that. Okay? just like that. This one's a little bit taller than that one. Might be because my templates were just a little bit off, but that's okay. We can trim that later, okay? Then this one is going to be the same as this one, but on the other side. It's going to go on the inside of this piece and the bottom of that piece. So I would do this one first, okay? Because this one has to go inside both of these like that, okay? So we'll do, this one's going to go on the outside of this one, okay? Outside of here, because you see there's extra space here. Goes on the outside. And then this takes up this extra space that's right here, like that. And gets attached to the inside of this one, okay? So you see how it's kind of like putting together a little bit of a simple puzzle, right? So let's start with side 2, the one we already smoothed. And we're going to score the 4 spots now. We have to score 4 places. One is here. Okay, next is here. On the inside, sorry, I'm covering with my hand, inside of this side. Not on the outside, but on the inside of it. Okay, then 2 more places here where it's going to attach to there. And then I'm recording. And then there's a one more spot down here. All right. Now remember, you only have to put a slip in one of the places. So I think I'll do it on here. We're going to go here. One of the 2 spots that is getting joined. And then we're going to go here. We don't have to do it on this one. Since I'm doing it on this one, just get plenty of slip. You could do it on here and not do it on there, just as long as you have it on one of the sides that's getting joined, okay? Then again, I'm going to use my hand for support so that this wall doesn't collapse. And I'm going to smush it down and wiggle it just a little bit, just doing a slight little wiggle to make sure all those scored areas join together. Okay. All right. And then on the outside, we don't need to use a coil. We just need to smooth. Okay, I'm smoothing it on the outside. And then on the inside, we're going to need 2 coils this time. We're going to need one here and one here. And again, I'll just take my extra slab, grab my needle tool, and just cut a sliver of that slab. Got 2 of them for the 2 coils that we need to make. Okay, and then we're going to put a coil down in here. Just up to there. And then actually this one might, if I roll it out just a bit more, it might be long enough to use right here. Okay, we're going to smush a coil into here. Okay, and then use your fingers to smush that in. And then use your modeling tool and your rib tool to get that nice and smushed in there and smoothed out so it doesn't look like there was ever a coil added. Okay, so I'll take this tool now and press that coil further into the seam. And this one. Remember to keep your other hand supporting the walls wherever you're pressing so you don't make your box collapse. Okay, and then like before, you can take the rib tool and do some smoothing. Okay, and if there's ever any areas that feel a little dry while you're smoothing, you can take your paintbrush, just add a little bit of slip to the areas that feel a little dry. You don't want to make your project too wet. If you make your box too wet, it's more apt to collapse on itself. So a little goes a long way. Just add a little slip. Where you're used to using a damp sponge, but a lot of times students will over wet the sponge. It'll be dripping wet, and then their project gets too wet and it starts to collapse. So I would say just use a little bit of slip for areas that feel a little dry to you, and then you don't risk getting your project too wet. Okay. What we also do need to think about at this point, before we have our entire box built, is smoothing the seams on the outside. We're not adding coils to the outside, but we do need to think about these seams where we're adding the clay on the outside. And again, if you want to add a little bit of slip and use your rib tool to do some smoothing, to make it look like those seams were never there. Okay. Still see a little bit of a seam here, so I'm just going to press it together a little bit more and then smooth it one more time like this. That's pretty good. And then I'm going to flip it this way and get this side. This side still has the texture from the slab roller. And that's okay because I'm smoothing out the seams anyway, and while I'm at it, I can smooth out the texture. You can see I'm using my other hand. I'm right-handed, so I'm using my right hand for the rib tool. My left hand is constantly supporting this slab. That would, if I didn't support it, it would just flop right down because it's not attached to anything. I'm just smoothing the slab, the whole slab, because getting that texture out. The seams are actually pretty smooth already. Okay. All right, so that's looking pretty good. I'm going to flip it back this way and continue with my third side. We still have some time left before the end of the period, so I'm going to continue with my third side, see if I can even get my fourth side on there. But remember, every time you add a wall, you have to add coils to every seam. And you want to smooth your coils every time, because if you wait till the end to smooth all your coils, you're going to be very disappointed because you can't reach in there anymore. After you get your last wall on, this is going to be too deep to reach your hand all the way into to really be able to smooth out all those coils. So smooth your coils as you go instead of waiting till the end. At the end, you can't even reach your finger in there. You have to use the modeling tool solely without your fingers to be able to smooth those last 3 coils that you're going to need for the last wall. Okay. All right. So this is side number 3 that I'm checking here. I'm going to check to make sure it's not too off in terms of size. Just doing some fixing here. This one looks really long right here. So I'm just going to press it back to the size it used to be before it got stretched out. All right, again, I'm going to slip on 4 sides. I think I'll actually smooth this out before I put it on, get this texture out, and that'll be the inside of the box. Check the other side. Okay, that's good. I always smooth it out afterwards when I'm smoothing my seams on the outside. So grab my fork again. I'm going to score here first. Then, instead of scoring on the inside of this piece, I have to score on the outside of this piece, because remember, my wall is not getting attached in the same way for this one. It's getting attached. You can see if I put it up like this, it's getting attached here and on the side of this wall. Instead of on the inside of the wall, it's going to get attached to the edge of this one. Okay, so this time I'm scoring here and on the edge of this wall. So try to do this so you're not covering it with the camera. Okay, so I'll just flip that up so you can see I've scored the edge of the wall instead of on the inside of the wall. Okay. Then for here, we're going to do it also a little bit differently. So I'm scoring the bottom of this wall as well as the side of the wall right here. Okay, instead of the edge again, it's going to be the 2 parts that are getting attached are on the front of the wall on this side, and then the bottom edge. And then I'm going to